a very warm welcome, particularly to those of you who are joining us from the Arctic Centre of the University of Lapland. Welcome to this poll. So, as we've already heard, the Arctic, the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush, the Alps, they're melting. Canada and Greece are also ablaze. Is that moved? No, it's an issue. Yeah. Click right. Let's try this.
Excuse me, may I see the...
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. So yes, the Arctic, the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush, the Alps, they're melting. Beyond the cryosphere, Canada and Greece are ablaze. Pakistan is still reeling from the human and economic losses of last year's monsoon on steroids. Across this region, across the Arctic and the world this summer, lives have been lost or left in rubble as a result of this year's crazy weather. The largest single driver of this suffering for people, for wildlife, for species is down to the parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. And at the same time, to pick just one major economy at random, in case you hadn't guessed, yes, I'm British, some governments of large historic emitters are a long way off meeting their commitments under international treaties. At ECMOD, with our scientists predicting the devastating impacts of climate change on water and food security, livelihoods, ecosystems, and for the 2 billion people and countless life forms for whom this region is home, we are setting out not just to monitor those impacts, but to try to stop the worst case scenarios from happening. Of course, the key way to do that is by pushing for faster and more ambitious climate action, emissions cuts, globally. So that's why at ECMOD we've been setting out to be much more visible, and wherever possible, to team up with allies, because the more of us saying roughly the same thing, the better. And together, we might just be a force too strong to stop. And this is where we need your help. On May 29th of this year, organisations came together to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the first ascent of Everest. Amidst all the celebrations of Norgay and Hillary's amazing achievement in 1953, ECMOD soft launched our global advocacy campaign, which is called #SaveOurSnow. We essentially hijacked the celebrations, making sure that the various dignitaries that trekked to Everest, Sagarmatha, Chomolungma to mark the event, including Norgay and Hillary's descendants, Helen Clark, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Kantcha Sherpa, the last survivor of the first ascent, all knew the dire state of the cryosphere and could speak with authority about what the future holds, not just for the snow here, but also for the 2 billion people downstream on current emissions trajectories. The result was a really significant amount of media coverage that put the cryosphere here on the map again. The idea behind the campaign is pretty simple. It was to forge a joint lobbying bloc from 3 communities that hitherto hadn't campaigned together. Firstly, mountain communities and indigenous groups. Secondly, athletes who spend their time in the mountains. Thirdly, our key people, our staff and the people in our networks. Why? Simply because these are the 3 groups that are most intimately familiar with what's going on in the cryosphere. So, to coin a phrase, they are the canaries in the coal mine. To take that first group, clearly I'm not from the mountains here. However, my husband emphatically and very, very proudly is. He has his roots in a tiny and very amazing village in Manang, which is up on the border with China. For as long as I've been coming to Nepal, over a decade now, I've sat with my in-laws and I've been listening to heartbreaking stories about the snow that has for generations been predictable and sustained lives and livelihoods and unique cultural practices for generations. Coming too soon, coming too late, coming too little, coming far too much, falling as rain, triggering floods or landslides of biblical proportions, or not coming at all. We created #SaveUsNo as a simple device by which communities such as my in-laws who might never set foot near a UN COP forum or a government, those furthest from power, that is, by which they might speak about those impacts on a global stage. While the Arctic is more sparsely populated, those voices are obviously also so powerful, and as Kirsi just set out, the networks that you have are huge. The Hindu Kush Himalaya is third in terms of the volume of frozen ice, but we do have a pretty significant human capital in these mountains. We have 200 million people that live here, and many, many millions more that know these mountains well and are impacted by what's happening on them. If those communities raise a collective voice, that's quite a lobbying block on its own. On to the second group. So the reason for joining arms with climbers and mountain athletes is that through the close connection to the land they develop during their sporting careers, many are increasingly interested in raising their voices for climate action. This community is seeing they're also eyewitnesses to what's going on in the mountains. The equivalent, I suppose, in the North Pole would be the explorers. This community has huge power. They have phenomenal social media followings. They command something akin to hero worship, thanks to their extraordinary courage and their mad achievements. They are also a community with much broader cultural reach than we have. They connect with brands, audiences, voters, activists worldwide. So it's a chance for us to reach new audiences. In May, we primarily worked with one athlete who's based in Norway. He's called Kilian Jornet, and the impact of his backing our campaign was astronomical. Lastly, academics, researchers, development organisations and diplomats. So ICIMOD's direct network. As you all know, academics, researchers, scholars are the single most trusted group in societies worldwide, everywhere from here to Timbuktu. All of us in this room today have an outsized responsibility at this moment to not pull our punches. So SaveUsNo really is primarily for you. It's designed as a simple, unifying badge, a public-facing umbrella brand for everyone working on cryosphere to get behind, to communicate to non-science audiences. Since joining ICIMOD, I've started following a lot more glaciologists around the world. I know now who the key people are, and I know to have my ear to the ground, but I also see a lot of heartbreaking chronicles of dying glaciers around the world that aren't backed by a kind of simple social sharing tool, whereby all of this work is folded together for the non-scientific audience to find. So at its most basic level, SaveUsNo is the hashtag that you put at the end of any social media post to make sure that there is one place where you can find all this evidence from around the world. That's an example of some of the stuff that comes up on my feed. I'm sure that you're all familiar with much more documentation like this. SaveUsNo is also our campaign to this year's COP. So as well as badging any cryosphere impact you're seeing as you go about your research, we are asking you to actually raise your voices face to camera and tell us what you're seeing, so we can give global leaders a sense of the communities stretching around the world that are desperate about what they're witnessing and wanting their leaders to get on the right side of history. And this is where you all come in. Dotted around the hall today are a few members of my team who over the next few days are here to take advantage of those longer breaks that were mentioned previously, And they are going to help us build a library of hundreds of what in media we call vox pops, or vox populi, the voice of the people, voice of the scientists in this case. All we ask is that you tell us who you are, what you do, what you're seeing in terms of snow and ice, and why that scares the hell out of you. I'm assuming that it does. And then ask world leaders to act to save our snow, to cut emissions to save our snow. We'll report as many of these as we possibly can, and we'll ask your social media handles to tag you. And please also feel free to record these when you're out in the field and ask those in your networks to do the same. Timing, as my team are tired of hearing me say, is everything, and we're essentially wanting to flood social media with these snippets at some very specific moments. First, just before the Ambition on Melting Ice Summit takes place in October, AMI, as I'm sure you all know, is a high-level group on sea level rise and mountain water resources, a novel alliance that brings together 20 cryosphere countries and low-lying states, formed by Chile and Iceland. It's raising awareness among world leaders that the time to prevent catastrophic and permanent impacts due to the physical reality of melting ice is even shorter than once thought. Secondly, we want to release a burst of films around a summit that's happening in November, a very high-level summit, and of course, during COP itself. So, with your consent, I'd like to ask you to help us flood people's screens with cryosphere impacts and ask for action. Here's a snippet of some of the films we made yesterday as a trial run for what we'll be hoping to do with you all.
Hello, my name is Dennis Chogal Sherpa. I am a glaciologist working at International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. I'm talking here from Namche Bazar, which lies at altitude of 3,440 meters above sea level. And I'd like to call up every world leaders to help save our snow in the teeth of climate change.
Hi, I'm Arun Srestha. I've been working in the area of climate, cryosphere, water, and livelihood for the last 30 years. And in those years, I've seen tremendous change in cryosphere, rapidly melting glaciers, snow cover, and its impact on flows and extremes and on people. I think it is very high time we put all our effort together in solving this issue and in saving our snow.
Hello, my name is Miriam Jackson. I'm a cryosphere specialist, and my work involves traveling around the Hindu Himalaya, countries like Nepal and Bhutan. When I talk to people, they tell me there's been a lot of changes in snow. There's less snow cover, there's avalanches happening in different places, and we're really noticing the changes. It's very important that we come together and save our snow.
I'm Khushbu Sharma, and I come from Sikkim, India. For the past few years, I have seen changes in climate and its impact on glaciers and melting. It's a high time for us to come together and save our snow.
Hello, I'm Arshini from Northeast India. I have seen a lot of climate change hazards taking place in my region, such as floods, landslide, high temperature rise, precipitations, etc. To stop this climate change impacts, I urge all the global leaders and communities to come together to save the snow.
Hi, my name is Bhupesh Aligari, and I work at Kisimod, a senior air quality specialist. I'm from Nepal. The evidence is clear that air pollution and changing climate is melting our cryosphere, including our snow. So let's come together and try to save our snow.
My name is Manchu Pandey. I'm from Nepal. Countries like Nepal that are in mountainous regions are facing a lot of damage due to climate change impacts. In my own experience, the last time I went to Kosekunda, the snow cover was really thick. However, this year when I went, it had significantly declined. We need to urge the global leaders to take concrete action, cut down on emissions for us to be able to save our snow.
This digital campaign exists to also support a pretty amazing physical endurance feat, which is going to be made by a climate advocate called Jamyang Jangso Wanjuk. He's going to cycle all the way from Bhutan to COP carrying the same Save Our Snow message. Bhutan, one of our 8 regional member countries, has unique moral legitimacy when it comes to climate action, of course. It's the world's first carbon negative country, as our very own Director General declared in 2009 at COP15 in Copenhagen in his previous role as Minister of Forest and Agriculture in the government there. It is also acutely vulnerable to impacts, with 60% of its ice and snow predicted to be lost by the end of this century, and the rest predicted to be gone soon thereafter. Jamyang has made a trailer film after cycling to Everest in May. It's off to a flying start with over 1 million views on Facebook alone. I'm going to play that film in a minute. Before I hand over, just to conclude, I really urge you to support Save Our Snow. Adapt it, translate it, carry the campaign on your website, add it to your email signatures, add the banner to your LinkedIn. Choices made now really will decide the future for millions. This campaign is very much about doing in the public space, in the campaigning sphere, what this conference is doing in the academic space, joining arms, joining voices, and collaborating for a brighter future. And now over to Jamyang.
My name is Jamyang Jamsuwangju, and I am setting off on an incredible journey. Home in Bhutan is a place that does something amazing for our planet. It absorbs more greenhouse gases than it releases, making it the world's first and leading carbon minus country. On this journey, I carry a small bottle filled with water from my homeland. Water from glaciers and snows now melting at an unprecedented rate because of man-made global warming. I began this journey riding through Nepal's breathtaking landscapes. Path led me to Mount Everest, Chomolungma, goddess mother of the world, a mountain so tall it feels like it touches the sky. I went there because, like the mountains of my home, this giant, magnificent wonder of nature is changing in a way we can't undo. Its glaciers and snows are retreating. We collected water from the world's highest glacier, and it too will ride with me. I meet wonderful people who live in the mountains. As I make my way through this challenging adventure, together, we see the truth right before our eyes, the danger and uncertainty that surrounds us all.
There is still time to walk a path towards a sustainable future. it all begins with us. Let our voices echo from the roof of the world. Let us be the catalyst of transformation as we embark on this mission to save our snows.